Good evening, everyone. Hello. Thank you, Bhante, for offering Dhamma tonight as well. Hello, Kevin, Matthew, who says, by the way, I like the photo you chose for this talk. The one you chose for last night's talk was great too. Hello, Jens. Hello, Scott, Catalina, Julia, Reed. Hi, Michelle, and hi, Ryan, who it says he's very excited to get to hear this live. And hello, Andrew. All right. Well, I think it's we can start with guided meditation. Thank you, Bhante.
So go ahead and get in a sitting meditation posture. So once again, if you're capable of sitting full lotus, sit in full lotus. If not capable of sitting lotus, shame on you.
Bhante's funny tonight.
In all honesty, if you're not capable of sitting lotus, really work on it. It's achievable for everyone. Ayasoma is rolling her eyes in the most dramatic way an Italian can be without speaking.
To quote Bhante Suddhaso, it's not much important what you do with your body, but it's what you do with your mind that is important.
So Ayasoma is going to be leading the meditation tonight. Okay, please get in a meditation posture, which doesn't need to be full lotus. It's not an absolute requirement. So sit in whatever meditation posture is doable for you. And making sure that you're sitting up nice and straight, with your pelvis tilted slightly forward, chin tucked in very slightly, shoulders back and relaxed, the hands together in your lap. And take a few long, slow, deep breaths. With each breath, letting the body relax. Making an extra effort to relax your forehead, your eyes, your cheeks, and your jaw. And let a slight smile form on your lips. And when the body is relaxed, the mind is starting to settle, you can allow the breath to return to its natural rhythm. Bring to mind someone who you care about very strongly. This might be your best friend. It might be your cat or your dog. It might be your mother, your father, your sister, your brother, your daughter, your son. as long as it's someone who you care about very strongly. Someone who, as soon as you bring them to mind, your heart melts a little bit. You immediately start wishing the best for them, wishing for them to be happy. So bring that person to mind and start wishing for them to be happy. Silently repeating, may they be happy, may they be healthy, may they be safe, may they be happy, may they be healthy, may they be safe. Just keep repeating these phrases in your mind, focusing on their meaning, focusing on producing and intensifying the feeling of benevolence, of well-wishing, of goodwill. May they be happy, may they be healthy, may they be safe. As you focus on the feeling of loving kindness, feeling of wishing well for that person, keep focusing more and more intently on the feeling itself, the feeling of benevolence, focusing on filling the mind, flooding the whole mind with just that feeling, just that attitude, just that mind state of benevolence. So dropping the me from the equation. So it's not I want them to be happy. It's just wishing for them to be happy. So there's no me in the picture. There's no I, there's no mine. It's just may they be happy. May they be healthy. May they be safe. It's just that bright, pure, boundless attitude of mind. That limitless open heart. May they be happy. May they be healthy. May they be safe. Keep focusing on that bright, gentle, loving mind state. And allow the particular person to fade away from your mind. Just focusing on the feeling of loving kindness, not restricted to any one being, not limited in any way, just limitless benevolence. So it might help to recite, may there be unlimited happiness. May there be unlimited happiness. Letting go of all concepts of individuals, all concepts of separate beings. Just focusing on the feeling of loving kindness itself without any idea of separate beings. Just focusing on benevolence, this wish for unlimited, unrestricted, unconditional happiness. May there be unlimited happiness. Whenever we catch ourselves holding on to some resistance, holding on to some concepts, holding on to some perception, holding on to some experience, we just let that dissolve into the vast, formless, limitless field of loving kindness. Just seeing this loving kindness as a natural element of the universe, a natural component of reality. Doesn't belong to me. It's not who I am. It doesn't define me. It's just a natural part of the universe. So fully engaged with the feeling of metta, completely absorbed in the feeling of loving kindness, but without any sense of ownership or self-identity towards it. It's just benevolence. It's not me, it's not mine. It's just this natural force of goodwill. It's like the sun shining, the wind blowing, and the attitude of limitless benevolence. Just a natural force in the universe. Sinking fully into all pervasive, indiscriminate love. This all-pervasive, indiscriminate benevolence. This benevolence, it knows no boundaries, it knows no walls, it knows no limits of skin, no edges of minds. It knows no concept of separate beings, no concept of self and other. Just limitless, all-pervading, all-saturating benevolence. As formless and pervasive as space itself, as formless and pervasive as consciousness itself, not owned by anyone or anything, just limitless, all-pervasive benevolence.
Thank you, Bhante, for guiding us in meditation. And hello to some of the friends who have come online in the meanwhile. Hello, Maria. Hello, Yudi. Hello, Ruth Ann. I hope you fixed your audio issues. Hi, Danilo Protodamma, who has a question already. Very good memory from yesterday. And hello, Bella Patralopis, who says, this has really helped me during this difficult times we're facing. Thank you all so much for doing this. Well, thank you for joining us online. We are all making this happen together. So it's very beautiful that we are practicing in these times, and let's always practice, whether it's a pandemic or it's not a pandemic. Okay, and hi, Bobby. Okay, so it seems like there's no audio issues. Right, so maybe we can start with the talk. Thank you, Bhante.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namassami. First off, for those who don't know what that short chant is, short chant which is commonly done at the start of any Buddhist ceremony, including giving a talk. So Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa means homage to the prosperous one, the worthy one, the fully self-enlightened one. So that's some of the names of the Buddha, some of the titles of the Buddha. And specifically in the tradition that I was trained in, we commonly will say after that, Buddhang Dhammang Sanghang Namassami, which means I pay respects to the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. So I pay respects to the enlightened one, to the teachings, and to the community of practitioners. So you know what that's all about. So the topic for this evening is Anatta, which is commonly translated as not self or non-self. And this is a very heady topic, which is one of the most challenging aspects of Buddhism to understand. In fact, one could quite reasonably say that it is the single most challenging part of Buddhism. And in fact, you could say that coming to a deep, complete experiential understanding of anatta is the single most difficult thing that you can do as a human being. So a lot of people, as they get into Buddhism and they come across the teaching on anatta, say, I don't understand this whole not self thing. It doesn't make any sense. I'm not getting it. And that's not surprising. The truth is, if you're not fully enlightened, then you don't get it. You might think you understand anatta, but if you're not fully enlightened, that means that you don't really understand anatta. You might have a intellectual grasp of the surface layer of meaning, but if we really fully understood not self, then we would be fully enlightened by now. So the teaching of anatta, of not self, is often held up as being the central defining doctrine of Buddhism. This is what defines Buddhism. This is what makes Buddhism distinct from every other religious and spiritual tradition. This is the unique characteristic of Buddhism. So it's really important to get at least a general concept of what anatta is. However, understanding anatta without a deep and thorough understanding of much of the rest of the Buddhist framework is very challenging. So advance warning for those of you who are still fairly new to Buddhist practice, today will be an advanced level talk. And we're going to talk about things which may go right over your head. That's okay. Just let it soak in. Some things will make sense to you, some things won't. Some things will not make sense to you now, but then later, maybe years later, you'll see the world in a bit of a different way, and these ideas will start to make more sense to you. They'll start to come home. Also, as we get deeper into Buddhist meditation practice, then we start to get a wordless understanding of anatta. And actually, the meditation practice that we were just doing, the way that we were approaching loving kindness meditation this evening was designed to start to give us some taste of anatta, to start to give some experience of what it is to let go of our self-identity, to see the world without the lens of me and mine, to see the world without the concept of separate beings, but just to see the world as it is. So then we can start to get some experiential understanding of what the Buddha was talking about when he said, Sabbe Dhamma Anatta. So all things are anatta, all things are impersonal. So we approach this teaching from both angles, both from the intellectual angle, so learning about this concept through study, through discussion, through listening to talks, through conversations with advanced practitioners. We start to get some intellectual understanding, and then doing the practices which help to bring up a sense of not self, so that we approach it from both angles. So, and here I would like to once again emphasize that the practices of generosity, the practices of kindness, the practices of compassion, these are some of the ways that we start to approach not self. So these teachings are quite common in many religious and spiritual traditions. So generosity and kindness and so on, you find them in virtually every major religion. And what you find in Buddhism is not on its surface dramatically different from what you see in any other spiritual tradition in this respect. What brings a new light to these basic teachings on generosity and kindness is when they're viewed through the lens of the teaching on not self. So why do we practice generosity? Because ultimately we recognize that the giver is not separate from the receiver. So giving to another person is just as natural as your body pumping blood to all its cells. It's not that the cells in your left hand think that they're more deserving than the cells in your right hand. It's not that the cells in your right hand are withholding the blood from the cells in your left hand. That would just be silly. No, all the cells in your body know that they're not separate from each other, that they're not distinct from each other, that they're all supporting each other, that they all are interdependent, that there's no clear boundaries and lines between each other. So they all share equally the resources of the body. There's no stockpiling or hoarding. There's just open sharing of all the resources that they have. So similarly, in Buddhism, we practice generosity not with the thought, I am giving to that person. We just practice generosity because the mind of a fully enlightened being is naturally generous. Because the mind of a fully enlightened being knows that there is no me and there is no other. There is simply the interdependent, interconnected whole. That's WHOLE, by the way. So the interconnected and interdependent completeness. And within that, there are no separate beings. There is the appearance of separate beings because we are delusional. But fundamentally, there are no separate beings. Just as it would be crazy if one of the cells in your left hand suddenly declared independence from the rest of your body and said, my name is Bob, and I am the cell named Bob, and I am going to stockpile all the blood for myself. Well, that would just be insane. In fact, if that happened, the cell would die almost immediately. It wouldn't live any length of time. It's not possible for the cell to survive independently. It only survives interdependently as part of an interconnected wholeness. So we practice generosity not because I want to give to that other person, but rather we practice generosity out of the deep recognition that there is no separation. There is no separateness. Generosity is the natural act of an enlightened mind. Similarly, the practices of kindness and compassion. Why are we kind? Well, it's the same reason why your body shares all of its resources with every other part of the body. Because there are no separate parts to the body. There's just the whole body. And the whole body supports itself. The whole body is completely interdependent and interconnected. So every part of it depends upon every other part, and every part of it supports every other part. And we cannot draw sharp lines between anything in the body. It's just the body. So in the same way, why are we kind to others? Because we recognize that we are not separate from them. They are not separate from us. There is no line between us. There is no distinction between us. To help others is to help ourselves. To help ourselves is to help others. Helping others, helping ourselves. There's just helping. There's just kindness. So it's not, I want that person to be happy. There's just benevolence. Without any discrimination, without any distinction, without any discrimination, without any preference, without any prejudice, without any partiality. There's just kindness. There's just benevolence. And that expresses itself through action. So in the suttas, the Buddha states in many, many places that the natural conduct of an enlightened being is kindness. The natural conduct of an enlightened being is compassion. They naturally act for the welfare of all living beings. And it takes no effort on their part. It's just as effortless and natural as the blood flowing through your veins. It's not like your heart thinks, I am now going to share blood with the other parts of the body. It just naturally does that, because why would it not? Similarly, an enlightened being doesn't have to think, I will now try to help other beings. It just does, because that's what they do. That's the natural tendency of a mind that clearly understands the interconnected, interdependent, mutually related nature of reality. So then those of us who are not yet enlightened, we're in the fake it till you make it camp. So we practice generosity and we practice kindness because we are trying to act like enlightened beings. There's a number of places in the suttas where the Buddha talks about this quite directly. When the Buddha speaks about taking the 8 precepts, for example, so there's a very common practice in Buddhist countries that twice a month, on the full moon and new moon days usually, so twice a month, it's ordinary for lay people to make a commitment that for one day, I will follow the 8 precepts. And the Buddha says, why do we do this? Because an enlightened being naturally follows the 8 precepts all the time. So by taking the 8 precepts for one day, then for one day we're acting like an enlightened being, which brings us closer to that state of mind. It brings us more into harmony with the mind of an enlightened being. It brings us more in affinity with the mind of an enlightened being. And that affinity then helps us to cultivate the underlying qualities of wisdom that manifest in that kind of behavior. So this is what distinguishes the generosity and the kindness practices in Buddhism from what you find in systems which do not have the concept of anatta. So in Buddhism, we do these practices because either of a recognition of the truth of not self, or because we are trying to cultivate an understanding of not self, an understanding of anatta. So these are really primal aspects of Buddhism. These are really fundamental, foundational aspects of Buddhism: generosity and kindness. Without well cultivating these two principles, we are far from enlightenment. We're not even remotely close to enlightenment until we master these two basic principles of Buddhism. And so generosity and kindness, these are not beginner level practices. They are beginner level, they are intermediate level, and they are advanced level. They run through the entire course of Buddhist practice. They're the foundation, yes, but they're also the support posts, they're also the walls, they're also the ceiling. They're the whole structure of Buddhism, is interpenetrated with these basic practices of generosity and kindness. So if you think that you're an intermediate level Buddhist and you have not yet mastered effortless generosity and kindness, bad news. You can drop the intermediate off of your title. You might still be Buddhist, but the intermediate's got to go until we master generosity and kindness. So coming then more specifically to talk about the topic of not self, of anatta. So this teaching, in its most fundamental formulation, what it's saying is that nothing whatsoever in the entire universe is personal. Nothing whatsoever in the entire universe belongs to us. Nothing whatsoever in the entire universe absolutely defines us. Nothing whatsoever in the entire universe is eternally me. Nothing that we can point to or indicate is who we are. So what we currently think of as me is simply a temporary experience. So this is something which we can confirm very directly in our own experience. And it's one of the reasons why the practice of recognizing impermanence is such a critical element of Buddhist practice. So just earlier today, I was reading the Meghiya Sutta. And towards the end of the Meghiya Sutta, the Buddha says quite directly, one who recognizes impermanence will recognize the truth of not self. Very simple, direct statement. If we see impermanence, then not self is just one step beyond. It follows naturally. And the reason for this is because when we ask ourselves, what is it that I think I am? And we'll come up with some answer as to what we think we are. And then we look at it and we realize, oh, that thing that I think I am, it's impermanent. It's insubstantial. Whatever I thought I was a moment ago doesn't exist anymore. So that can't have been me because it's gone. This sense of me is still here, but whatever I thought was me is gone. So clearly that wasn't me. And whatever I'm currently experiencing is also impermanent. So this can't possibly be me either. So then the natural thing that we then next tend to ask is, well, then what am I really? So I can't be all these impermanent things. So then what am I? Am I the pattern of impermanent things? For example, yesterday I tended to be grumpy, and today I tend to be grumpy. So at any given time, I may or may not be grumpy. So I am not grumpiness, because sometimes it's there and sometimes it's not. But there is a pattern, a tendency towards grumpiness, a habit of grumpiness. So maybe that's what I am. Maybe I'm the pattern of grumpiness. But that also is subject to change. As time goes by and I do more and more loving kindness meditation, the pattern of grumpiness fades and changes and shifts and disappears. So I'm not the pattern either. The mind is changeable. The mind is flexible. The mind is trainable. The mind is rewritable. So we're not the patterns of mind either. So we're not the body, because the body is obviously changing all the time. So we can't possibly be the body. We're not the objects of mind, because the objects of mind are also constantly changing. And we're not the patterns of mind, because those too are changing. So what's left? So with this practice, we just keep asking ourselves, what's left? What is it that I think I am? And whatever we find, whatever we come up with as to what we currently think we are, we recognize it as impermanent, as insubstantial, and therefore as not who we are. Therefore, as not our true self, not our true nature. So this practice then naturally leads to the shedding of all of our pain, the shedding of all of our displeasure, the shedding of all of our discontent. It all vanishes, it all disappears as we continue with this practice. Put simply, why does life sting? Why does life hurt? Because we take it personally. That's why. That's why life hurts, because we take it personally. If we don't take it personally, it doesn't hurt. A simple example of this is if somebody insults you and you think, oh, I am being insulted, then we get offended. We get upset, we get angry, we get bothered. But if somebody says an insult and we don't take it personally, then it's just words. In fact, we might even find it silly. We might even find it comical. Like, oh, how funny, this person's trying to insult me. What a goofball. Oh, little buddy trying to insult, how cute. We might actually find it amusing rather than offensive or hurtful. So what's the difference? The difference is that we're not taking it personally, which means it doesn't hurt, doesn't offend us. Well, with Buddhist practice, we come to realize that there's nothing that can be hurt. There's nothing that can be offended unless we take it personally. If we perceive it as an attack on me, then it hurts. But if we don't perceive it as an attack on me, then it doesn't hurt. The incident is still happening, but it doesn't sting us because there is no me that can be attacked. We're not putting up a target that can be hit. So there's nothing to hit. So this is the natural effect of doing the recognition of not self, is that then there's no place where dukkha can land. There's no place where discontent can land. There's no place where displeasure can land. We become permeable. Permeable in the sense that all things flow through us without sticking, without impinging, without striking. They flow through without harm. So this doesn't mean that your body is beyond harm, of course, because bodies are bodies, and bodies are subject to harm. That's part of their nature. But because we recognize that the body is not who we are, then the harm that comes to the body does not have the ability to disturb our mind. It doesn't have the ability to disturb our peace of mind. So as the body decays or gets sick or starts dying, we just recognize it is a body that is decaying. It is a body that is sickening. It is a body that is dying. But since we do not think I am sickening, I am dying, we do not think my body is decaying, my body is weakening, then it doesn't disturb our peace of mind. We just recognize it as the way things are. And if we're not careful, then when we approach these kinds of concepts, it can devolve into a kind of apathy, a kind of indifference. It can even devolve into an unfeeling cruelty. So this is exemplified in some of the non-Buddhist beliefs that were going around at the time of the Buddha that are mentioned in the suttas. So there were some spiritual systems at the time which held that there was no such thing as karma. that our choices did not carry any kind of moral causality. And one of them that's quoted in the suttas, there was one spiritual system that explicitly stated that if you run a sword through somebody else's body, well, it's just atoms passing through other atoms, no problem, no big deal. They're not actually killing anyone. It's just the illusion of killing. But this is not even remotely close to what the Buddha was talking about. Because the Buddha also recognized that even though ultimately everything is impersonal, ultimately there are no beings, still there is the experience of separate individual existence by delusional beings. So that experience is present. It's part of samsara. It's part of reality. And for those of us who are still caught in these delusional mind frames, then yeah, when somebody sticks a sword in us, it's pretty bloody uncomfortable. It's actually really not nice at all. So there's still the acknowledgement of the experience of pleasure and pain, of the experience of happiness and sadness, of the experience of elation and depression. And recognizing that that too is an inseparable part of reality. So the mind of an awakened being recognizes the inseparability of all beings, and therefore they are naturally compassionate. They are naturally free of any desire to cause harm. Their only intentions are to be of benefit. So even though they know that the appearance of separate beings is an illusion, still they recognize that those illusory separate beings experience pain and suffering and torment. And so from that wellspring of deep compassion, they cause no harm, and they only seek to bring benefit. So this is why I emphasized right from the start that the practices of generosity and compassion are, one, the natural conduct of an enlightened being. So a deep realization of not self leads to kindness, not to apathy, not to indifference, not to cold-hearted cruelty. So a deep understanding of not self leads to warm-hearted compassion. And second, that our practice of moving towards a deep understanding of not self must include every step of the way compassion, kindness, generosity, and warm-heartedness as a central aspect of our practice. The moment we lose touch with that warmth of kindness and love, then we've lost touch with the Buddha's teachings on not self. It indicates that we've strayed off the track. We've fallen into the weeds. We've gotten lost in a dangerous sidetrack. So we always need to keep that in mind. So the teachings on not self are always meant to be understood within the envelope of the teachings on kindness, within the envelope of the teachings on compassion. So I think I've said too much already. So there's a lovely saying in Zen. They say, too many words. So in line with the Chan masters of old, I'm going to tell myself too many words and stop talking at this time. However, if you have any questions, please feel free to type in your questions. I see there's a few questions. So we'll go ahead and start going through your questions at this time.
Yeah, there's a lot. So there will still be quite a lot of talking to be done, which is great. First, I'll start with the comments. Truth, swords hurt, says Reed. And Gabriela says, and killing people is just rude.
Yeah, I mean, seriously.
And Scott says, just a pile of quarks. Referring to what you were saying earlier. Okay, so let's go all the way to the top. So maybe the question from yesterday we can take at the end, or do you want to? Okay. So Gabriella says, Venerable Sir, may you be healthy and safe. Aww.
You too.
My question is, what is the difference between Anatta and Sunyata, and how do they relate to Paticca Samuppada?
All three of those concepts are interrelated. And in fact, every one of those includes the other two. So they're not separable from each other. So if you understand Sunyata, then you understand both Anatta and Paticca Samuppada. If you understand Paticca Samuppada, then you understand both Anatta and Sunyata. And if you understand Anatta, then you understand both Sunyata and Paticca Samuppada. So these three teachings, not self, emptiness, and dependent origination, they're all just different ways of talking about the same thing. So these are completely interconnected, interrelated concepts. They're just slightly different ways of talking about the same fundamental reality. Okay?
Thank you, Bhante. And Danilo, I think he was referring to something that you said earlier, asked, is that not cancer, what he just described?
Oh, like a cell that declares independence and starts hoarding resources. Yeah, so cancer doesn't usually turn out very well, either for the cancerous cell or for the host body. So let's not be cancer.
And Bobby asks, in the Chula Vedalla Sutta, it seems that after exiting the state cessation of perception and feeling, you gain full understanding of only one of the tilakkhana. So it is only necessary to understand one of the tilakkhana to achieve enlightenment.
So first off, to quote the Chan Masters, too many words. Second, if you understand one of the tilakkhana, you understand both of the other two. So as I mentioned before, with Anatta, Sunyata, and Paticca Samuppada all being interrelated, in the same way, the three characteristics, so dukkha, anicca, and anatta, are all interrelated. So there's no such thing as only understanding one of the three. It's kind of like trying to pick up only one side of a coin. It just doesn't quite work that way. If you pick up one completely and thoroughly, then you get both of the other two as well.
All right, thank you, Bhante. And Gabriella asks, in the Samyutta Nikaya 1248, a cosmologist asked metaphysical questions and said that there is no unity nor a plurality. Is numeracy also a view?
Numeracy?
Numeracy.
I don't know what numeracy means.
Numerology, maybe.
Numerology? No.
Maybe
no.
numeracy.
Numeracy, I think, but does she mean plurality?
Numerazioni.
Plurality? So in Buddhism, so coming back to the unity and plurality thing. So in Buddhism, either viewpoint, if you say only this is true, either viewpoint is wrong. So if you say unity is absolute truth, that's not correct because there's also the experience of plurality. If you say that plurality is the absolute truth, then that's not correct because there's also unity. So Buddhism goes beyond unity and plurality. This is actually what the Heart Sutra is talking about. So emptiness and form. So emptiness is unity, form is plurality. So this, is there only ultimately one indivisible everything, or there are a bunch of different things? Well, actually, either view is incomplete. It's only the complete interpenetrating unification of these two views that one comes to a full understanding of things as they are. Okay?
Great, thank you. Actually, she kept on going. I think there's another question that is referred to the one before, maybe. Because in the Anguttara Nikaya 1095, when asked, is the whole world saved, or half, or a third? And the Buddha remained silent. So I wasn't sure if numeracy of people is conditional.
Yeah, so if that's the sutta that I'm thinking of, it's the one where afterwards Ananda says to the Buddha, why did you not answer this question? And then the Buddha gives the simile of the gatekeeper. And he says that if there's a city with firm, solid wall, so solid that not even a cat could get through. And there was only one gate, and the gatekeeper watches that gate. Then the gatekeeper knows that everyone who enters the city will come in through that one gate. But he doesn't know how many people have passed through the gate, and he doesn't know how many people will pass through the gate. What he does know is that everyone who enters the city will come in through the same way. And the Buddha says, in the same way, he knows that everybody who attains enlightenment will do so by following the Noble Eightfold Path. But that this question of whether some will get saved or all will get saved or none will get saved is completely irrelevant. What's relevant is that everyone who attains enlightenment will do so by following the Noble Eightfold Path. Exactly the same set of practices for absolutely everyone without exception. That's what's important.
Thank you. And Julia, has a question for me. She says, Ayasoma, do you really see how the pattern of Bhante's grumpiness is disappearing? Just thinking.
Yeah, well, it's fine. If you think I'm just as grumpy as ever, it's okay. I can live with that news.
No. He also laughs about his grumpiness. So it's a very good sign. And Gabriella says, the Purana school of Akiriyavada is the school of a moralism that was taught by Purana Kassapa that he is speaking of. Okay, this was related.
It's really nice to have so many well-read Buddhist practitioners joining in these conversations.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for all of you who are joining in. It's really lovely.
Yeah, you guys are great. Reed asks, Bhante, you're using a lot of phrases that might incline one to think that Buddhism espouses a view of oneness or that we're all one, but it's my understanding that those are not the case. Can you flesh out how they differ from the Dharma or perhaps how they're similar?
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, if one emphasizes either the view of unity or the view of plurality, then one misses the mark. Just as one emphasizes either emptiness or form, then one misses the mark. That's it. Next question.
Gabriella commented to, I think, that question saying, indeed not, hence my question about numeracy and the cosmologer. And Danilo says, I have found that while meditating, I sometimes just feel random bouts of compassion, wanting to rip my heart out 1,000 times and give it to everyone. I should start doing metta.
Remember that compassion is not self-destruction, because compassion knows no boundaries of inside and outside. So the practitioner is also fully embraced within the warm gentleness of compassion.
Okay, and Reed was replying to Gabriella saying, yeah, but I don't know what those words mean. Well, not numeracy at least, but I guess I have a hunch now. Gabriella also says, also as a note, upekkha is often poorly understood. Upekkha is being courageous in the face of adversity.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
Courage in the face of adversity. Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
For the record, I don't know what numeracy means either, unless it's a synonym for plurality. Otherwise, I'm not really sure what you mean by that.
Yeah, Gabriella, if you want to expound on that, feel free to put it on the live chat so we can talk about it further. And Bobby says, thank you, Bhante. Also, what's the difference between cessation of perception and feeling and the arupas?
So the arupa jhanas, or the arupa ayatanas, these are formless attainments. So these are states of samadhi, states of concentration that can happen when the mind is focused on letting go of physical experience. So you can have experiences where there's absolutely no physical objects apparent at all. Your body disappears, but also the entire physical universe disappears. So this is what's called the arupa jhanas, or the arupa ayatanas. The cessation of perception and feeling is one of them, but it is unique from the others in that it can only be attained by someone who is completely free of sensual desire. So only someone who is a non-returner or higher can attain the cessation of perception and feeling. Whereas the other arupa jhanas can be reached by unenlightened beings. That's the big difference. Okay.
Thank you. And Melvin asks, it's possible to have an intellectual understanding without a deep realization, but is it possible to have a deep realization of emptiness without being able to put it into words?
Yes. Yes, that is possible. So that does happen for some people, and usually it's because they've practiced very extensively in past lives. So their mind is already very accustomed to the perception of emptiness, very accustomed to the perception or the experience of impermanence, the experience of anatta. So then when they start to practice in this life, their mind very easily goes towards those perceptions, those experiences. But if they haven't studied Buddhism extensively, they may not understand intellectually what they're experiencing, even though they're familiar enough with those states of mind to be able to enter them. So yes, that does happen sometimes.
And Sanya says, thank you, Bhante, from Tim and Sanya. Hope you guys are well.
Yes, so happy you're joining in.
Yeah, it's great. And Michelle asks, Bhante, you spoke of others insulting one and no bother due to no self. But what about when the insulting comes from within oneself, such as regret or a feeling of I should have done this or that?
Yeah, so self-hatred, self-criticism, that's still a form of self-obsession. It's still a form of conceit. So it's the negative side of conceit, the unpleasant side of conceit, but it's still a form of conceit. But we also need to distinguish here between self-hatred and conscience. So when we recognize that we've done something harmful, then we make a vow to try to do better in the future. But we also recognize that those harmful deeds were anatta, they were not self, and they were arising from old habits and patterns, which are also anatta. Therefore, we are not defined by the wrong choice. We're not defined by the misdeed. We're not defined by the habits and patterns which led to the misdeed in the first place. That's not who we are. Nonetheless, those patterns are present. And if we don't do something about it, those patterns will continue to manifest and continue to cause all kinds of problems. So we vow to do something about it. We vow to change those conditions, even though we know that they aren't ultimately who we are. In fact, it's because we know that they aren't ultimately who we are that we have the power to change them. And also we know that we're not letting go of me or mine. We're just letting go of some harmful mess. We're just cleaning up a harmful mess. So we don't need to have any kind of bad feelings about changing our habits because they're not who we are anyway. Okay?
Thank you. Reed says, I appreciate the answer, Bhante and Gabby, for asking it first. Gabriela says, numeracy is the view that there are numerous individuals versus unity, there is only one individual.
Yeah, so unity versus plurality. Though, to be a little more clear, when I was speaking about unity, I was not referring to beings, but rather to all phenomena. So not just sentient beings, but all phenomena. So unity, as I was speaking about it, is actually a synonym for emptiness, or sunyata. Because it's the unity not just of all things, but also the unity of all things with the absence of all things. That's the most complete unity, is the unity of existence and non-existence, which I'll talk about in more detail when we get to the Kachanagota Sutta in a few days.
Great. Jan says, like trying to pick up one side of a coin. Love it. Thank you, Bhante. Reed has words of appreciation as well. And Cam says, thank you, Bhante. It's such a deep teaching. As we can see from the number of comments tonight, it would be good to have more sessions on Anatta. Yeah. Yes. Maybe we can have it we'll work on it. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Danilo says, I'm a little saddened that I have focused so much time on practice and have neglected the study a little bit. Once schoolwork eases, I hope I can resume my studies. See, this is so great that everybody is inspiring each other to deepen either practice or study. It's great.
Looks like Jen has a question. Yeah.
Is happiness first being experienced in meditation and then put into practice in daily life?
Usually, yes. So if anyone couldn't hear, Jen was asking, is emptiness first experienced in meditation and then applied in everyday life? And the answer is usually yes. Usually that's how it goes. Because it's very difficult to get a deep understanding of emptiness while already engaged in ordinary activities. It's much easier when we're in stillness and when we don't have any other duties or anything else to do. But once we have some taste of it, some experience of what it is to perceive emptiness, then we can apply that same perception while we're engaging in activities. It's more difficult, and it takes a lot of practice, but it can be done. Yeah, usually it starts with the meditation practice. Without deep experience in the meditation practice, you can't apply it to everyday life. It's too difficult. Okay.
Great. And Cam says, I would like to learn more about relations between anatta, karma, and rebirth. Great. That can be a perfect topic to delve into deeply. Gabriella says, also with regard to anatta in the Samyutta Nikaya 22.59, since disenchantment with the aggregates, a condition for awakening, does this mean an aversion can arise from dispassion?
No. Disenchantment is not aversion. Disenchantment is a very peaceful state of mind when one recognizes that, in this case, the five khandhas cannot provide ultimate happiness. Therefore, we stop seeking for happiness in them. So disenchantment, it's like one of the similes the Buddha gives is he said it's like a child playing with toys. But as the child gets older, there comes a point where they just lose interest in the toys. They just see that there's no real happiness to be found in the toys. So they just naturally stop playing with the toys. They don't hate the toys. They're not disgusted by them. They're just not interested because they see that there's no value in them. So that's the mind of disenchantment. It's when we recognize that there's no true happiness to be found in pursuing the five aggregates. So we stop pursuing them. So it's a very peaceful, serene, blissful state of mind. So there's no aversion there at all. Okay?
Great. And Yulia says, thank you, Bhante. Me too. I would appreciate more talks on anatta. The topic is trending, as they say. And Kevin is saying, Dhamma sisters and brothers, if you wish to support the monastery and the teachings, please visit the Buddhist Insights website to donate, listed at the top of this thread. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. So that's buddhistinsights.com/donate. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu for encouraging people to practice dana. And Yudi says, sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Michelle, thanks you. And Maria also appreciates Michelle's question. And Danilo asks, often I try to focus on my breath while walking, working, doing chores, etc. I wonder, does that count as practice, or is practice only when you sit to meditate?
Practice is every moment that you are developing wholesome mind states. So the practice that you're describing is one way that we develop mindfulness and equanimity in everyday life. So yes, I recommend that you keep it up, especially if you find that it's helping. Yeah, keep it up.
Great. Gabriella asks, how do aggregates cycle from one being to another?
I don't understand. I don't understand what you're asking. Because they don't cycle from one being to another. They're constantly blinking in and out of existence. They appear and vanish continuously. And they never belong to any one being in the first place. And the closer you look at them, the more we see that there's not really anything of substance there in the first place. So when we talk about the Penapindupama Sutta, the simile of the lump of foam, then I'll go in more detail about recognizing the true nature of the five khandhas. But yeah, for now, suffice to say that they don't have any real substance anyway, and they don't last for longer than a split second, a fraction of a second anyway. Technically, they don't last any amount of time. So there's no transfer between beings because there's nothing lasting that can be transferred. And they don't transfer between beings because there are no beings to be transferred between either. So either I'm not understanding your question or the question doesn't quite apply.
She's saying, I was asking about the mechanics of khandha.
Yeah, my answer stands. Yeah, thank you.
And says, so they don't actually change?
I don't understand. What doesn't change?
The aggregates, maybe?
So they change in the sense that everything changes. They change in the sense that everything which appears immediately disappears. They change in the sense that everything which manifests immediately vanishes. Okay? Does that clear that up?
We'll see if there's another question popping up. In the meanwhile, Scott says, Sadhu, 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 thanks for sharing the Dhamma. I am Bhante. Well, I didn't say and didn't share anything tonight, but I happily listened to some Dhamma. This has been great. Thank you so much for all the questions. Bobby says, another request for talk or teaching would be for elements meditation and talk on 4 elements, maybe a sutta study in Mahara Hulovada Sutta. So actually this weekend we're doing a whole retreat. The Vipassana retreat will all be on the 6 elements meditation. So there you go. You don't have to wait for that long. You can practice online for the whole weekend, not even a talk. Lots of good stuff. Okay, so I'll just go scroll up a little bit to, I think it was Reed's initial question.
It was the Proto-Dhamma's question?
Oh, Proto-Dhamma, actually. Yes, you're right. It was not Reed, it was Proto-Dhamma.
One about Asada and Nandi?
Yeah, very good memory. Can you explain the difference between Asada and Nandi? Are they both inherently harmful because they may lead to Raga and Tanha?
Yeah, so Asada, as I mentioned the other day, Asada means gratification, and Nandi means delight. And actually, when the Buddha defined Asada, people said, well, what is the gratification in the case of form? Like, what's the Asada in the case of form? And he said the gratification is the pleasure that arises dependent upon form. And he said so Nandi is delight. So it's when we delight in the pleasure that comes from form, that's when we get stuck. That's when we get trapped. That's when we get lost in desire and attachment. So delight is an activity that we do. So it's a mental activity in which we're starting to obsess about the pleasant experience that's coming. So the gratification itself is present. It arises. Then we choose to delight in that gratification. So the pleasure appears, then we choose to delight in it. And the choosing to delight in it is what agitates and disturbs the mind. That's the distinction. Okay?
Great, thank you.
So just to be clear, in Paticca Samuppada, which again we'll get to in a few days, Pasa Pachaya Vedana, so from sense contact there is feeling. So feeling is pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. In the case of asada, it's pleasant. So Pasa Pachaya Vedana, so from sense contact there is a pleasant feeling. That's the gratification. Vedana Pachaya Tanha. So from feeling there is craving. So we have the pleasant feeling, and then we start delighting in it, and wanting it. And that's when we fall into dukkha. So the Buddha puts these as in a causal relationship with each other. So from gratification arises delight. We choose to delight in, we choose to obsess about the pleasant experience. And that's when the mind gets lost in suffering. Okay? So any last questions?
Yes, we have one last question from Andrew that goes, in the progress of insight, a stage of disgust is mentioned. So is some aversion in regards to formations not unavoidable on the path to dispassion?
So first off, I want to know what the Pali word being translated as disgust is. It's probably either nibbida, which is more commonly translated as disenchantment, and I think much more accurately as disenchantment. Or it might be viraga, which means dispassion. So disgust, as we use the word in English, is a form of aversion, and therefore is not a factor of the path. Also, the stages of insight are not something which is found in the suttas, it's something which is found in apocryphal literature. So while interesting, it's always to be taken with a grain of salt. Okay.
All right, I think that's it. So Scott says, great facilitation, Aya. And Breed says, thank you so much, Bhante Suddhaso and Aya tech support. I'm truly looking forward to this weekend. So are we. And Bobby is also very excited about this weekend. And so is Brian, who says, I'm looking forward to this weekend. So glad I got pointed to BI's Eventbrite and YouTube page. We are too. Welcome. And Melinda says, good night. Thank you. And everybody says, thanks. Thank you. Thank you. Sound advice right there. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight. This is really great. I'm always so happy to connect here on YouTube online. So for those of you who are new, we're meeting every morning at 8 a.m. New York City time for Sutta study with Bhante Suddhaso. And then in the evening, we have, just like tonight at 7:30, we have meditation followed by Dharma Talk and discussion. And this weekend we'll have a weekend retreat, and then we'll probably also have a weekend retreat next weekend. We'll figure something out in the next couple of days and post it. So keep safe, keep indoors, keep meditating, keep studying the Dhamma, and sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Oh, and Reed asks, how long do you expect these evening sessions to go on? Until the end of the pandemic. So hopefully not too long, but realistically, they won't end anytime soon, I think. So we'll see how things go.
Yeah, we're probably looking at least a few weeks. So we'll have lots of chances to support each other in the Dhamma.
Yeah, so he says, for the duration of the COVID awareness or beyond, well, I mean, the evening session is definitely something that we were doing already here at the Wednesday evening anyway at the monastery. So we will definitely keep on broadcasting that one, and perhaps we can add a few others as well. Let's see how it goes. too much future. Let's focus on the present.
All right.
All right. Have a great night. Bye-bye. Or have a great, as I said yesterday. Bye-bye.